Don't want to wait for the easy way? All right, we will wait longer for the official way. I work as on-site IT for a company, handling user-end hardware and networking issues. Most of my calls are the usual user error or just turn it off and on again type. It can be mind-numbing at times, but I genuinely enjoy it. However, the bane of my existence, like many IT folks, is printers. One day I received a call from an office at the far end of campus. Bundling up, I grabbed my tools and made the trek over. When I arrived, the urgency was palpable. The staff was in a panic, claiming they desperately needed the printer. But only 3 out of 12 employees were in the office that day due to the cold, and they had multiple printers available. I did my best to fix the issue. I cleaned the printer, changed the rollers, and checked the settings, but it just wouldn't cooperate. After a frustrating struggle, I informed the woman who called that I would need to replace it. She was understandably upset, so I headed back to the shop to get a new printer ready. Once I had the replacement set up and working, I returned to the office, only to discover that the Ethernet cable had fallen behind a heavy filing cabinet. The wall plate it was plugged into was right in the middle of this 6-foot cabinet. There was no way for me to reach it, and the cabinet was too heavy for me to move alone. When I explained the situation, the user became frantic. Apparently, this was the only printer they could use, and it was the closest one to her. I reassured her that I could set up her computer to print to another nearby printer, and promised to return the next day with a tool to retrieve the cable. She insisted we call property management to move the cabinet immediately. I informed her that their turnaround time was typically 24 hours, unless it was an emergency, and they were only on call during weekends. Reluctantly, I called them on my mobile and put it on speaker. I managed to catch someone before they left for the day. He confirmed that they wouldn't be able to get to it until Tuesday at the earliest. I could hear the keyboard clicking and some light-hearted banter in the background. When he asked if I wanted to plug in the cable myself, I stifled a chuckle, knowing he was more than capable of doing that. The user looked stunned, as if she had just been hit with a reality check. The property management guy assured us they would come by Tuesday unless something urgent came up, and then he hung up. I turned to the user and said, "Well, that works for us in IT. I'll remove the old printer, and once property management confirms everything is done, we'll have a tech come by to ensure the new printer is working properly." Back at the shop, I shared the story with my fellow tech, and we had a good laugh about it. I called property management to cancel the request, letting them know I would bring my grabber tool the next day to retrieve the cable. They decided to wait until Monday to cancel, since doing so would trigger an email notification to the user. The next day, I successfully retrieved the cable with my tool, secured it back in place, and plugged it into the printer. Thankfully, everything worked perfectly, and I was able to close out the ticket. My new job didn't tell me their no visible tattoos policy until after I was hired. I'm an early childhood professional with over a decade of experience, currently finishing my master's degree. I have several large tattoos on my forearms, all of them plant-themed, and 2 nose rings. In my previous roles, my appearance was never an issue, except for one time when I switched from hoops to studs to keep the kids from grabbing them. Recently, after a lengthy hiring process that included a video interview and an in-person meeting, I accepted a position at a new organization I was really excited about. On my first day, I received a thick book of policies to review, including the dress code. The HR director had discussed most points with me during the interview, but one crucial detail was missing: the policy against visible tattoos and facial piercings. I immediately approached the HR director, reminding her of my appearance and asking how strict this policy was. She confirmed it was very firm. I would need to remove my nose rings, even though they were covered by a mask, and wear long sleeves or wrap my arms in cloth bandages to hide my tattoos. Hand washing is constant in early childhood settings, and I asked how to manage that with bandages. I was told I could change them if they got wet. When I questioned why this policy hadn't been mentioned earlier, it was brushed off, with another supervisor saying she hadn't noticed my tattoos before. The HR director explained that this policy had been enacted years ago due to concerns from parents about gang-related tattoos, emphasizing the need for a safe school environment. While I understood their reasoning, it didn't make me feel any better. I was surprised to face this issue in 2022, especially during a staffing crisis in my field. I knew they had the right to enforce this policy, but I wondered if the hiring team had handled it appropriately. Should I start asking upfront about my tattoos and piercings? I've always preferred to focus on my skills rather than my appearance, but I didn't want to go through this again. A few months later, I decided that this environment wasn't right for me. The tattoo and piercing issue was significant, but I also had concerns about COVID safety and communication with administration. I chose to resign immediately after my first day. I know it's not typical to leave so quickly, but I felt it was the right decision, since my first 2 weeks would have been training. Fortunately, this turned out to be a great choice. I filled my employment gap with short-term nanny work and babysitting, which allowed me to apply for a fantastic school. During my second interview, I asked the director if my tattoos or piercings would be an issue. She assured me they wouldn't, and even expressed how no one should have to worry about such things when applying for jobs. That was a major green flag for me, and it turned out to be the perfect place to work. My dad's secrets are coming to light, and it's destroying my view of my parents. I recently discovered that my dad has a life full of secrets. I always knew he wasn't perfect, but as a daughter, you hold certain expectations for your parents. My dad has worked for a construction company for over 30 years, and many of his coworkers have known him for just as long. My husband started working with him a few years ago, and at first, everything seemed fine. But lately, I've noticed my dad treating my husband differently. A few coworkers pointed it out, mentioning how my dad invites a specific group to lunch, including my brother-in-law, but my husband has been left out. They told him that my dad likes to surround himself with people who enable him, so he shouldn't take it too personally when my dad ignores him. Then, the story started coming out. Apparently, my dad has a pattern of hiring women he's interested in and firing them before things get too serious. When he first got a lead role, he had an affair with a company office lady and got her pregnant. At my mom's request, he surrendered his parental rights to stay married. For a while, he stayed faithful, but eventually, he fell back into his old habits. He gives these women his credit cards during work hours, telling them to treat themselves, which is ironic, because he often tells my mom he's short on cash. My husband struggled with whether to tell me, knowing how close I am to my dad and my strong feelings against cheating. But he felt it was wrong to keep this from me, especially after a female coworker approached him, worried about her job after rejecting my dad's advances. Since finding out, I've been an emotional wreck. I feel nauseous, dissociated, and heartbroken for my mom. I can't believe I'm losing the father I thought I knew. I want to gather evidence of his recent cheating before confronting my mom, but I'm terrified of how she'll react. I never thought she would forgive a cheater, yet she knew about his affair child and made him give up his parental rights. Who are my parents? I went back to therapy, but my new therapist keeps telling me it's not my relationship to fix. I'm just so angry right now. In an unexpected turn, I went to surprise my dad and ended up meeting the woman he's involved with. At first, she tried to hide from me, which makes sense since I visit my dad often. She's only a few years older than me. The nausea is overwhelming, and I can't shake the thoughts of needing to find more evidence or confront him. I worry about family milestones coming up and how this will affect everyone. It's hard to understand why this hurts so much. Why do men feel the need to have women on the side? This has shaken my trust in men. Even though I know my husband is wonderful and faithful, is he truly the only man I can trust now? I'm filled with anger towards my dad, and I have to keep smiling through it all. Thankfully, the cold and snowy weather gives me an excuse for my shivers. I'm exhausted and just needed to share my feelings, as I have no one else to turn to. TIFU by chasing diagnoses for 35 years, and the answer was in my dinner. Let me share a story that spans about 35 years. When I was around 7, I started experiencing painful swelling in my neck and throat during a road trip with my cousins. Everyone thought I was just getting sick and that some sunshine and time would help. I remember it vividly because it was so uncomfortable that I could barely eat. After a week, I returned home and told my parents. They took me to the pediatrician, who examined me and declared I had mumps, despite me being vaccinated. Eventually, it went away, but then it happened again when I was 10. A new doctor fresh out of school dismissed the mumps diagnosis and sent me for imaging and testing. Everything came back inconclusive. The new conclusion was that it was psychosomatic, which led me into years of therapy, questioning why I couldn't just let it go and whether I was seeking attention. The sensation never truly left. It just fluctuated in severity. Fast forward to age 19. I was in the military and home on leave, visiting friends and family. This issue had been bothering me for 12 years at that point. One day, I rode with a buddy to the Sprint store in freezing weather. We grabbed hot coffee before heading back out. I took a sip and felt something in my throat move, like inches. I started coughing and ended up hacking out a tonsil stone about the size of a popcorn kernel. I had no idea what it was at the time, so I wrapped it in tissue and brought it home. My parents immediately recognized it, and I felt relieved, thinking that had to be the end of it. But it wasn't. Fast forward again to around age 32. I had kids, a wife, and a career. Managing tonsil stones mostly worked, but I still had that persistent lump in throat feeling almost all the time. I finally saw an ENT in the city we had just moved to. He suggested we skip the tonsil stone routines and just take my tonsils out. No more weird mouthwashes, brushing excessively, or avoiding certain foods. I was ready to be done. The surgery was intense, with a chaotic recovery involving blood and an ER that looked like it hadn't seen many patients. But hey, my tonsils were gone, except the lump feeling was still there. I assumed it was phantom pain from the surgery and tried to live with it. We moved again to a bigger city, and I sought what felt like my 100th opinion. More tests, more appointments. This time the conclusion was allergies. I went through 3 years of allergy shots, but I still felt it. At that point, I was completely defeated. People thought I was either imagining it or seeking medication. Even my family treated it as a mental health issue. I gave up. Then yesterday, my youngest made taco rice for dinner. As I was eating, I bit down on something very hard, about the size of a small marble. I spit it into a napkin and discovered it was a bone, an actual chunk of bone. My first thought was, how does a bone like that end up in ground beef? Then it hit me. The lump feeling was gone. For the first time in 35 years, there was no swelling, no pain, no persistent lump sensation, just normal. To sum it up, I spent 35 years being told I had mumps, anxiety, allergies, or that I was making it up. I went through years of therapy, had my tonsils removed, and did years of allergy shots. Then yesterday, I bit down on a bone chunk during dinner, and the lifelong lump and throat sensation disappeared instantly. I'm booking an ENT follow-up because this is unbelievable. Yes, I saved the bone because I knew no one would believe me otherwise. I understand it could have been lodged somewhere unusual, and I'm not claiming any medical magic, just sharing what happened exactly as I described. AITA for yelling at my girlfriend due to her camera roll? I'm a 23-year-old guy and I've been dating my girlfriend, who's 21, for about 4 months. She's incredible, beautiful, smart, and has a personality that lights up a room. Honestly, she's my dream girl. But there's one issue that's been bothering me. Her camera roll. She was in a serious relationship for 4 years during high school and part of college. They broke up last year, and since then she's dated a few people before me. She rarely talks about her ex, except when sharing stories about her friend group, which he was part of until he left. According to her, they ended things on good terms, but she realized they were on different maturity levels. What really gets to me is when she opens her camera roll to show me something from the past. She scrolls past tons of pictures and videos of her and her ex. I've mentioned it before, but she laughs it off, saying she's too lazy to sort through 30,000 photos she hasn't deleted since 2015. The photos aren't romantic. They're just memories of high school fun with friends. Still, I can't help but feel a twinge of jealousy. Today, she showed me a group photo from 2018, and there he was, smiling in the background. I couldn't hold back my annoyance and said, "You have a lot of pictures with him." She replied, "Well, he grew up with me and my friends. It's like a look back into my childhood." I told her I didn't like those pictures, and she offered to move them to a drive, but that didn't feel like enough to me. I snapped and said she should just go back to him if those memories were so precious. That's when she stood up and said, "I don't want to go back to him, but I also don't want to be with someone who is emotionally insecure. I have enough to deal with." Then she left. Now I'm debating whether to text her and apologize. AITA for how I reacted. After thinking it over, I decided to reach out and apologize for crossing a line. She accepted my apology, but said she couldn't continue the relationship. She mentioned that my lack of self-awareness and emotional maturity was something she couldn't overlook. So, I guess I'm single now. My dad was murdered in 1989. When I was just 13, I was home with chickenpox. My dad kissed me goodbye and left for work. Little did I know, that would be the last time I'd ever see him. By Sunday, I received a call from the 65th Precinct in Brooklyn. My mom was at the store, so I took a message. When she got home, she called the detective and learned something tragic had happened to our dad. She quickly arranged for someone to stay with us and took off to the city with my dad's coworker, Tommy, and his girlfriend. I don't remember how long it was before my mom returned, but when she did, she pulled my brother and me into her room. With tears in her eyes, she told us our dad was dead. I was devastated. I was so close to him. My brother, only 9 at the time, just looked shocked. He later told me he didn't know how to react. The funeral turned into a nightmare. Women connected to whatever was going on showed up, and my mom was furious. My 3 cousins had to hold her back from confronting them. My uncle took photos that were later given to the FBI. These women harassed us, calling at all hours with threats, claiming they were going to kill my dad. I think we still have some of those old answering machine tapes. Witnesses reported that my dad was beaten so badly they thought he was decapitated. The autopsy revealed broken ribs, but oddly, there was no internal damage. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. He was found by his car, which was left running and unlocked. One report even suggested he was pushed out of a van. We suspected his business partner was involved. He had a life insurance policy on my dad and was desperate to keep the partnership. My dad had worked hard to become a pharmacist and wouldn't have tolerated any illegal activities. My mom said he reported something suspicious to the FBI before he was killed. I remember hearing about a failed attempt on his life, with rope burns around his neck. But my mom now denies that ever happened. When we sought answers, the detective brushed us off. The district attorney warned us to back off, saying it could put us in danger. That scared my mom, and she stopped pursuing the case, even though she knew the FBI was investigating. Things got even stranger when we discovered that the date of my dad's death had been changed by 15 days. My mom believed the FBI was responsible, but according to my stepdaughter, who works as a mortician, that shouldn't be possible. Years later, we received a call that my dad's social security number was being misused. The culprits were caught, but it felt eerie. My mom also claimed that the person who killed my father had been apprehended, but she was vague on the details. Whenever I tried to dig deeper, she became reluctant to share more. Now she's starting to say things that contradict my memories, and we're beginning to question her narrative. So much doesn't add up. As I look into it further, I find it hard to verify anything. I'm left wondering if my dad's murderer was ever truly caught, and I feel lost, searching for answers. I died on my sister's birthday, and don't know how I can celebrate her birthday for the rest of our lives. Yes, you read that right. I was pronounced clinically dead for 12 minutes on my sister's birthday last year. A week before her birthday, I underwent surgery to remove a blood clot in my renal vein, but it didn't go as planned. I was told I needed another surgery to replace the vein with a pig artery and to add a stent to prevent further complications. I was hospitalized in the special care unit, waiting for the surgery. I even asked if we could reschedule it, not wanting to ruin my sister's special day. But, as you might guess, that request didn't go through. On the morning of my surgery, I called my sister to wish her a happy birthday. We shared a heartfelt moment, and she reassured me that everything would be okay because nothing bad could happen to me on her birthday. We discussed the possible complications, and I signed the consent forms. I didn't think much of the small chance of vein rupture, but I was in that less than 1% category. The surgery began well. The surgeon successfully removed the blood clot and sutured in the pig artery. But then, as they deployed the stent, my vein ruptured at the suture sites. The surgeon clamped both sides to stop the bleeding, but I had already lost most of my blood. My heart stopped. I was clinically dead for 12 minutes. During those 12 minutes of CPR, the head surgeon told the resident that I wasn't going to make it. But that resident, who had never lost a patient, fought for me. Those extra 2 minutes saved my life. I received multiple blood transfusions and was hooked up to various machines. Once I stabilized, they life-flighted me to a trauma hospital, where I was given just 4 hours to live. My family had to say their goodbyes before I was flown away. My sister was celebrating her birthday with friends when she got the call. The news shattered her, and she was left in shock. After the flight, it took 6 hours to stabilize me. I was put on a ventilator and life support as my body struggled to function. I was placed in a medical coma. During that time, they discovered a tear in my bowel from a previous surgery, which required yet another operation once I was stable. My family was told I might not survive the night. They scrambled to get my sisters to the hospital, and when my sister arrived, it broke her heart to see me connected to all those machines. She described me as swollen, barely recognizable, and cold to the touch. I remained unconscious for 7 days. On day 5, I became mentally aware but couldn't wake up. I could hear my family talking, the nurses calling my name, and my husband playing my favorite music. When I finally woke up, I was terrified, surrounded by tubes and restraints. The staples in my abdomen had torn open, leaving my insides exposed. My family had to witness this gruesome sight as I remained open for 53 days, undergoing wet-to-dry packing until I could have a surgical closure. I faced 10 surgeries during this time and spent 12 days on a ventilator. I struggled with breathing trials before finally being taken off the ventilator, but it had damaged my vocal cords. For 2 months, I could barely speak. My sister helped me communicate with a whiteboard, and the first thing I wrote to her was, "I love you." I wanted her to know I was still here and that I loved her deeply. I spent 14 days in the ICU before moving to a wound care unit. I had to relearn everything: talking, swallowing, eating, sitting up, walking, and using my left arm. I was on a feeding tube for 62 days and bedridden for 6 weeks, totaling 70 days in the hospital. My sister was there every single day, spending 14 hours by my side. She brought her iPad so we could watch movies to distract me from the pain. She helped me with personal care and was my rock during my darkest days when the PTSD felt overwhelming. After I was released, she stayed with me, helping me with everything: showering, eating, dressing, and physical therapy. Even now, though she's back home, we talk every day. But here's the struggle. I died on her birthday. The most traumatic day of my life fell on a day I loved celebrating with her. Now, I don't know how to celebrate her birthday without reliving that trauma. I feel guilty because she's my best friend and I love her so much, but thinking about that day makes me want to hide away. We're both young, and I don't want this to haunt us forever. We're in therapy, but I still can't shake the memories of that day. The bully who got my dad fired had to beg him for a sale years later. My dad made him wait 2.5 hours, gave him false hope, and then crushed it. This story is about my dad, his first job, and a dish served very cold years later. Years ago, my dad landed his first job in sales at a wholesale computer shop. He got the role through a connection and was the only sales guy on the team, which included 2 technicians. One of the technicians was a former classmate from an IT course. You'd think having a familiar face would help, but it was the opposite. As time went on, it became clear that the 2 technicians despised him. They treated him poorly, and it felt like their sole purpose at work was to make my dad miserable. It got so bad that he would come home crying every day. His mental health took a massive hit, and naturally, he struggled in sales because he was a wreck. He even went to the owner's house once, breaking down and begging for help. Unfortunately, the owner didn't care. Eventually, my dad was let go for poor performance. That experience was so traumatic that he quit sales entirely and pivoted into teaching, which he ended up loving. Fast forward many years, and he worked his way up to become the principal of an international school. One day, the school needed to purchase a large number of PCs. A salesperson showed up to discuss quotes, and my dad got a call from his assistant saying there was a vendor waiting to see him. When he asked for the name, he immediately realized who it was: the technician who had tormented him years ago. My dad told his assistant to make him wait. He let the guy sit there for 2.5 hours while he went about his day, sipping coffee and doing paperwork. Finally, he told the assistant to send him in. The technician walked in, clearly unaware that the power dynamic had shifted. He started with all the formalities, asking how my dad was, trying to charm him. Then he had the nerve to pull the old friends card, reminiscing about their time in the IT course. Here's the kicker. Not once during the meeting did the technician mention their time at the wholesale shop. He conveniently forgot the months he spent making my dad's life miserable, because he knew if he brought it up, the sale was dead. Instead, he overshared, desperate for a deal. He revealed he had been fired from that original shop, let go from multiple jobs afterward, and had taken out a large loan to start his own shop. He admitted his business wasn't doing well, and that he really needed this sale to make his loan payments. Otherwise, he might have to close down. The same man who used to make my dad cry was now calling him sir, being overly respectful and practically begging for help. My dad decided to twist the knife. He didn't kick him out right away. Instead, he listened to the pitch for a full 20 minutes, asking questions and nodding, giving the guy false hope that he might actually get this life-saving contract. After wasting nearly 3 hours of the technician's day and building up his hopes, my dad simply said, "I'll let you know." He did not buy the PCs. Later, we found out that the owner of that original store, the one who fired my dad, went bankrupt and is now working a menial job as a technician at a repair shop. As for the bully, I doubt his shop stayed open much longer without that sale.